I thought losing my father was the worst pain I would ever face. Until my mother's new husband left me bleeding on the floor. And the woman who gave birth to me chose silence over love. But even that wasn't the deepest wound. The real betrayal was buried inside a truth my grandmother had been protecting for years. My name is Aaliyah Brooks, and I'm 35 years old. If you saw me today, walking through the tall glass doors of a financial consulting firm, holding my head high, speaking with certainty, you'd probably assume I've always been this woman. Strong. Composed. Untouchable. But I wasn't born strong. I was raised strong, by a man whose love built the foundation of everything I am. My father, Henry Brooks, was the kind of man who made life feel safe just by being in the room. I grew up in a small, warm apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina, where he worked as a high school history teacher. He woke up early, brewed cheap coffee, played old jazz records, and hummed along while grading student papers. His presence filled every corner of my childhood with softness. He used to say, "Lily, the world is loud, don't let it drown out your own voice." And he meant it. Every word. I was his only child, his pride, his joy. I was the girl he carried on his shoulders in the park, the teenager he taught to balance a checkbook, the young woman he encouraged to chase her dreams even when money was tight. He didn't have much, but whatever he had, he shared with me. The last birthday we spent together still sits like a photograph in my memory. He bought a small chocolate cake, placed 30 candles on it, even though I was only turning 29, and said, laughing, "You shine brighter than just one number." I didn't know that would be the last time I'd see him laugh. Just 6 months later, he collapsed in his classroom. A sudden, massive stroke. By the time I reached the hospital, he was already gone. The world didn't just break that day, it emptied. I remember sitting beside his hospital bed, holding his still warm hand, begging for a miracle I knew wasn't coming. I remember the doctor's voice, gentle but final. I remember walking out of the hospital alone, feeling like half of me had been ripped away. For weeks, I could barely breathe. For months, I couldn't sleep without hearing his voice echoing in my memory. My mother grieved differently. She cried, yes, but her tears dried quickly. Too quickly. Before I could fully process losing the only stable parent I ever had, she began making decisions. Fast, cold decisions that didn't feel like grief but something far more uncomfortable. Within months, she announced she was seeing someone. A man named Leon Price. I remember staring at her, stunned, wondering how she could move so quickly from mourning to replacing. At the time, I thought she was lonely, confused, trying to fill a void. I told myself she deserved companionship. I told myself she would choose someone good. Someone safe. I didn't know that Leon would become the storm that shattered what was left of my family. I didn't know he would make me bleed. And I didn't know that the truth my grandmother was hiding would one day turn everything I believed about my mother upside down. But that discovery, that betrayal, was still waiting in the shadows. Leon Price didn't walk into our lives like a guest. He walked in like a replacement, as if my father's memory was a piece of old furniture my mother had decided to throw out. The first time I met him was on a warm Sunday afternoon. My mother invited me over for lunch, sounding unusually cheerful on the phone. I wasn't ready, emotionally, mentally, or in any way, to meet the man she was already calling her companion. But I went, partly out of respect, partly because I didn't want another argument. I remember stepping into the living room and seeing him standing there. Tall, broad-shouldered, a fixed, almost calculated smile on his face. He extended his hand before my mother even introduced us. "Leon Price," he said. "Your mother has told me so much about you." There was a tone in his voice, too smooth, too confident, too rehearsed. Not warm, not sincere, just polished. I shook his hand out of politeness, but something inside me tightened instantly. There was a heaviness around him, an energy that felt like a warning I couldn't fully understand yet. My mother hovered beside him, almost nervous, almost trying too hard. She laughed at everything he said, touched his arm often, and kept glancing at me, as if waiting for approval she hadn't earned. I wanted to be supportive, I truly did. She was my mother. She had just lost her husband, my father. Maybe this was how she coped. But the more Leon spoke, the more I felt something cold settle in my chest. He never asked about my father, not once. Never offered condolences. Never acknowledged the grief that still lay like a shadow over our home. Instead, he talked about himself. His business ventures. His investments. How he knew how to handle money, and didn't like loose ends. How he believed people should stay in their place. Every sentence felt like a subtle threat wrapped in charm. During dinner, he leaned back in his chair, studying me the way someone inspects a puzzle piece they're not sure how to use. "So, Aaliyah, your father left a good insurance payout, didn't he?" My fork froze halfway to my mouth. My mother's face stiffened. My stomach dropped. I forced my tone to stay neutral. "That's not something I discuss with strangers." He smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. "Good. You're smart. Smart women know how to share responsibility with the head of the family." The head of the family? I wasn't sure whether to laugh or walk out. My mother said nothing. Not one word. That silence told me more than anything else could. She wasn't just dating him. She was already leaning toward him, choosing him, building something with him, and everything about her eyes that night said she wasn't planning to look back. But I didn't know how far that choice would go. How much loyalty she would give him. How much she would sacrifice, even if it meant sacrificing me. Over the next few months, their relationship escalated quickly. Too quickly. Leon began taking control of everything. My mother's finances, her schedule, even her social life. He talked about managing household money, about creating a strong family structure, about discipline. Whenever I visited, he made comments about the way I dressed, the hours I worked, the way I spoke. "You're too independent," he said once. "Black women don't need that much freedom. It ruins families." I should have walked away from him right then. But he wasn't the one I was trying to protect. My mother was. And she was blinded by the attention, by the company, by the idea of not being alone. She insisted Leon was misunderstood, disciplined, a traditional man. But I wasn't fooled. Not by his charm. Not by his confidence. Not by the way he looked at me like I was a threat he needed to tame. I just didn't know how far he would go. Or how far my mother would follow. Because Leon wasn't just a controlling man. He was someone who wanted ownership. Possession. Power. And in his mind, I was the one piece of the household he could never fully control. That made me his enemy. Long before I even realized it. Leon didn't become dangerous overnight. His darkness came slowly, like water rising under a closed door. Quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. By the time my mother married him, I had already moved into my own apartment and was building a stable career as a tax and financial consultant. Numbers made sense to me. Money had logic, rules, structure. People didn't. But numbers never lied. I wish I could say the same about my mother. In the first year of their marriage, she changed in ways I didn't expect. Her voice became softer around Leon. Her opinions became smaller. Her decisions became his. And the man who once shook my hand with fake politeness no longer bothered pretending. He didn't like me visiting unless he approved the timing. He didn't like me questioning his decisions. He didn't like that I wasn't financially dependent on anyone. not even my mother. But what he hated most was that I was the only reminder that this family had existed before him. It started with subtle requests. "Aaliyah," my mother would say, "Leon needs a little help with a business investment." Then it became pressure. "We're family now, and families support each other financially." And then it turned into emotional manipulation. "Your father would want you to help. You know he always took care of us." But my father never meant for me to fund a stranger's ambitions. He never meant for his love to be used as leverage. I wanted to say no. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to say no. But my mother, she cried, she begged, she insisted Leon just needed a push. So I gave in, once. A short-term loan, she called it. $12,000. My savings for a down payment on a better apartment. It stung, but I convinced myself it was temporary. It wasn't. Weeks later, it was another request. Then another. Then another. Leon grew bolder each time, almost amused by how easily he could corner me through my mother. He'd sit across from me at their dining table, tapping his fingers on the wood as if calculating how far he could push. "You make good money," he'd say casually. "A daughter should support her mother." But it wasn't my mother he wanted support for, it was himself. My financial expertise told me everything. This man was drowning in debt. Credit cards. Failed investments. Unpaid loans. He needed a lifeline. And my mother had handed him me. The breaking point came when I discovered what they had done behind my back. One morning, while checking my accounts, I noticed a missing amount, $18,000 withdrawn without my authorization. I froze. My chest tightened. I traced the activity. The transfer was made using my mother's login device. Leon's signature was forged on one document. My mother's handwriting was on another. Together, they had taken the money. Together, they had crossed a line I never thought a parent could cross. I drove to their house shaking with disbelief. I wasn't even angry yet, just numb. I confronted my mother first, hoping, foolishly, that there was some explanation. Her eyes darted away. Her hands trembled. And then she said the words that carved a wound inside me I can still feel. "Aaliyah, we needed it. Leon said you'd understand." Understand? Understand theft? Understand betrayal? Understand being robbed by the woman who gave birth to me? Leon stepped into the room, leaning against the doorway with a smug expression. "You make more money than you need," he said. "You should be grateful to help your family." Family. 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 He kept using that word, but nothing about him felt like family. He felt like a thief wearing my father's absence as armor. That night, for the first time, I cried not because I missed my father, but because I finally understood how deeply alone I was without him. If he had been alive, none of this would have happened. He would have protected me. He would have shielded me. He would have never allowed my mother to hand my life over to a man who saw me as a wallet. But life doesn't pause for grief. It sharpens you with it. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The girl who tried to protect her mother began learning how to protect herself. I didn't know then that this was only the beginning, that the real danger wasn't Leon's greed but his temper. And the day he would finally snap, he wouldn't aim for my money. He would aim for me. I always believed that when a parent hurt you, it was by accident. A misunderstanding, a moment of weakness, a temporary lapse in judgment. But nothing about what happened that night was an accident. Nothing was a misunderstanding. Nothing was temporary. It was intentional. It was targeted. And it changed everything. It happened on Thanksgiving, the first one without my father. I shouldn't have gone. Something in my chest felt uneasy all day, a heaviness I couldn't explain, but my mother begged me to come. She said it would bring the family together, said we needed new memories, said Leon wanted to make peace. Peace. I almost laughed when she said it. But for some reason, maybe guilt, maybe hope, maybe the quiet voice inside me that still wanted a mother, I agreed. When I arrived, the house felt wrong. Too quiet. Too staged. The dining table was set with the good plates my father bought years ago, the ones my mother only brought out for special occasions. The smell of roasted turkey filled the air, candles flickered softly, and cheerful music played in the background. But underneath all that, there was a tension. A sharp, invisible wire pulled tight through the room. Leon was already irritated when I walked in. "You're late," he muttered, not even looking at me. My mother gave him a warning glance, then turned to me with a forced smile. "Aaliyah, sit. Let's try to have a nice evening." Try. We were always trying. Always pretending. Always swallowing the truth to keep the peace. But peace doesn't survive in a house built on lies. Dinner started normally enough. Awkward small talk, forced compliments on the food, Leon bragging about a new business deal that didn't sound like it existed. But the moment he brought up money, the mood shifted sharply. "So," he said, carving the turkey with deliberate slowness, "when are you planning to return the amount you owe the family?" My fork froze. My mother's breath hitched. "I don't owe you anything," I said quietly. "You stole from me." He slammed the carving knife down so hard it rattled the plates. "What's your tone?" "My tone." I leaned forward. "Leon, you took $18,000 from my account, behind my back, using forged documents. That's not family. That's fraud." His jaw twitched. My mother whispered, "Aaliyah, please." But I was past the point of silence. Past swallowing pain. Past protecting people who never protected me. "For months," I continued, "you've controlled her life, drained her savings, manipulated her, and used her grief to your advantage. I'm done being quiet." Leon stood up slowly. Too slowly. Like a storm gathering strength. "Get out of my house." "It's my father's house," I shot back. "And you'll never be anything more than a parasite who crawled into it after he died." That was the moment everything snapped. Leon lunged toward me, but not with his hands. He grabbed the heavy ceramic serving tray from the table, thick, solid, easily 10 pounds, and swung it toward me with full force. I barely had time to shield myself before it crashed against my shoulder and arm. The pain was immediate, sharp, burning, electric. I stumbled backward, feeling warm blood trickle down my skin. For a moment, the world blurred. The sound of the platter shattering on the floor echoed through the room, pieces scattering like broken promises. I looked up at my mother, hoping, praying, begging silently for her to help me. She didn't move. Not an inch. Her eyes were wide, frightened, but not for me. She rushed to Leon instead, grabbing his arm, whispering, "Baby, calm down. She provoked you." Provoked. Provoked. The word hit me harder than the ceramic tray. My mother knelt beside the man who had just assaulted me, while I stood bleeding from a wound he gave me. I felt something inside me collapse. A truth too painful to swallow. My mother wasn't confused. She wasn't trapped. She wasn't pressured. She had chosen him. Over me. Fully. Completely. And that realization hurt more than the blood dripping from my arm. More than the bruise forming beneath my skin. More than the betrayal itself. Because in that moment, I realized I no longer had a mother. I had a stranger wearing her face. I grabbed my coat, my keys, and my dignity, what little was left, and walked out of the house without a word. My hands trembled, my vision blurred, and every step felt like stepping farther away from a life that was already gone. But as I reached my car, I remembered something my father used to say. When the world turns against you, Go to the one person who would never lie to you. There was only one person left in my life who fit that description. My grandmother. And the truth she would reveal to me would change everything I thought I knew about my family. I drove to my grandmother's house with one hand gripping the steering wheel and the other pressed against my bleeding arm, trying to stop the warm, steady flow trickling down my skin. The pain was sharp, but the betrayal hurt more. My mother choosing Leon, defending him, comforting him, holding him, while her only daughter walked out injured and alone. By the time I reached my grandmother's small brick home, the adrenaline had faded, leaving behind exhaustion so heavy it felt like my bones were made of stone. I didn't even knock. I couldn't. My hands were trembling too badly. But she opened the door the moment I stepped onto the porch, as if she felt me coming. "Aaliyah," she whispered, her voice breaking the instant she saw the blood on my arm. "Baby, what happened to you?" And for the first time in a very long time, I let someone hold me without fighting it. She wrapped her arms around me, gentle, steady, warm, and guided me inside, sitting me down on her floral-patterned sofa. Her hands moved with practiced calm as she cleaned the wound, applied pressure, and wrapped it with a bandage. But the whole time, her eyes kept flicking up at me, searching for answers I didn't have the strength to give yet. When the bleeding slowed, she finally asked, "Did he do this? That man your mother married?" I nodded. She closed her eyes, pain, anger, and something deeper passing across her face. "Aaliyah, sit with me. There's something I've been waiting to tell you." I shifted slightly, wincing at the ache in my shoulder. "Grandma, I can't handle another shock right now." She took my hand. Her grip was firm, unshaking. "Baby, this isn't something I want to tell you. It's something I should have told you years ago." Something cold curled at the base of my spine. I had always known there were secrets in our family. Quiet tension, unexplained arguments between my mother and grandmother, long silences during holidays. But I never imagined those secrets had anything to do with me. My grandmother took a slow breath as if bracing for impact. "Your father, Henry. He left something behind for you. Something important. Something your mother didn't want you to know about." My pulse jumped. "What do you mean?" She stood up and walked toward her bedroom. When she returned, she held a thick envelope, old, slightly yellowed around the edges, sealed with tape. She placed it gently in my hands. "This is your father's letter. The last one he ever wrote." My heart cracked. I hadn't known he ever wrote something for me. I never received a letter. My mother never told me about anything like this. My grandmother continued, her voice shaking now. "Henry knew he wasn't well. He didn't tell you because he didn't want to worry you. But he wrote this in case something happened. He gave it to me because he didn't trust your mother to deliver it." I froze. My breath got stuck in my throat. Didn't trust my mother? Why? Why would he think that? My grandmother's eyes softened with sorrow. "Aaliyah, your father left a financial safety net for you. A significant one. A life insurance policy. Savings. A retirement account. He wanted you to be secure. He wanted you to have a future without struggle." My hands tightened on the envelope. "He left over $150,000 in your name. Directly to you. Not your mother." My blood ran cold. My voice barely came out. "Grandma, I never saw $1 of that." She nodded slowly, as if she already knew. "Your mother and Leon drained it. Years ago. Before he even died." The room seemed to tilt. My ears rang. My heart pounded so violently I thought it might explode from my chest. "My mother," I whispered. "She stole my father's money? She stole his last gift to me." My grandmother looked at me with a mix of heartbreak and fury. She took it the month after he passed. I confronted her. She told me to stay out of her business. Leon helped her. He was already influencing her. They spent it all before you even graduated. Tears filled my eyes, hot and uncontrollable. First the betrayal at Thanksgiving. Now this. Years of lies, theft, manipulation. And all from the two people who should have protected me most. My grandmother reached forward and wiped a tear from my cheek. Baby, I'm so sorry. I should have told you earlier, but I was waiting for the right time. I thought your mother would come to her senses. I thought she would tell you herself. I never imagined she'd let that man turn her into someone so cruel. I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight, my chest hollow, my heart shattered. Why didn't she love me enough? I whispered. My grandmother squeezed my hand. She loved you, Aaliyah. But she loved control more. And when Leon came along, he fed every insecurity she had. He convinced her you didn't need the money. He convinced her you were too independent. He convinced her he should handle everything. I let out a shaky breath. How could she choose him over me? How could she let him hurt me? My grandmother leaned closer, her voice low, steady, almost fierce. Because she lost herself long before you knew it. But you still have yourself. And now you have the truth. And truth, my dear, is power. I looked down at the bandage wrapped around my arm. I felt the weight of the envelope in my lap. I felt the ache of betrayal deep in my spine. And I felt something else, a spark. Small. But burning. I wasn't just hurt. I wasn't just broken. I was angry. And for the first time, I was ready to fight back. The truth had been buried for years, but now that I had it, I was going to use it. Because Leon and my mother had taken everything they could from me. But they hadn't taken everything I had left. They hadn't taken my strength. And soon, they would learn what a mistake it was to ever think they could. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a moment. I sat on my grandmother's couch with the envelope in my lap, replaying every memory of my father. His voice, his laugh, the way he hugged me, the way he always said, "Lily, promise me you'll never let anyone dim your light." And then I thought about Leon. About my mother. About the money they stole. About the Thanksgiving dinner. About the ceramic tray crashing against my skin. Every memory twisted inside me like a blade. But somewhere between midnight and dawn, the grief shifted and hardened into resolve. I hadn't just been hurt. I had been robbed. Manipulated. Physically attacked. Emotionally abandoned. Legally cheated. This wasn't a family problem anymore. This was a criminal situation. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. My grandmother came out of her bedroom early in the morning, already dressed, her hair tied neatly, her expression fierce but calm, like she had been preparing for this moment for years. "Baby," she said gently, "today, we're going to fix everything." "I don't know how," I whispered. "They took my money, my father's money, and my mother won't even admit it. That's why we'll go to someone who doesn't need her admission." I frowned. "Who?" She smiled, a tired but determined smile. "A lawyer who owes your father a favor." At 9 a.m., we arrived at the office of Attorney Samuel Hargrove, a sharp, seasoned African-American lawyer known for his precision and backbone. My grandmother had brought me to him once when I was a teenager to notarize school papers, but I had never seen him in full professional force. When we entered his office, he stood up immediately, his expression darkening at the sight of the bandage on my arm. "What happened?" he demanded. I hesitated. My grandmother stepped forward. "Samuel, it's time. She needs your help." So I told him everything. Not as a daughter crying for sympathy, but as a victim laying out facts. As a professional detailing crime. as a woman acknowledging her own trauma to take back her power. I explained Leon's financial manipulation, the unauthorized bank withdrawals, the forged signatures, the stolen $150,000 life insurance meant for me, the physical attack with the serving tray, my mother choosing silence, my years of quiet compliance, my father's letter, my grandmother's knowledge. By the time I finished, Attorney Hargrove wasn't just angry, he was furious. He leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. Aaliyah, this isn't one crime. This is a chain of crimes. My grandmother nodded. Tell her what we're looking at. Hargrove listed them out one by one. Financial fraud, forgery, identity misuse, unauthorized bank transfers, insurance theft, elder influence manipulation, physical assault, intentional harm. And, he added, tapping his pen on the desk, we can build a solid civil case to recover your money, and a criminal case to ensure he faces real consequences. I exhaled shakily. But what about my mother? He held my gaze with a mix of sympathy and honesty. Your mother was a participant. Maybe not the mastermind, but she allowed it. She signed documents. She helped him. She lied for him. My stomach twisted. Will she go to jail? That depends on how she responds, he said carefully. If she confesses, testifies against him, and cooperates, she may avoid serious charges. But if she defends him, she will, I cut in, my voice bitter. She already has. He nodded slowly, sadly. Then she'll face consequences too. A knot tightened in my chest. I didn't want to destroy my mother, but she had already destroyed us. Attorney Hargrove leaned forward. Aaliyah, this isn't your fault. You didn't put her in this position. She put herself there. He opened a folder and began pulling out forms. Now, I'll need copies of all financial statements, the forged documents, the letter your father wrote, and the photos of your injuries from last night. I froze. Photos. My grandmother gently touched my arm. Baby, you have to document everything. My voice cracked. It feels so humiliating. It's not humiliation, Hargrove said firmly. It's evidence. And evidence is how you win. So I lifted my sleeve, showing the bruise, dark purple, swollen, painful. My grandmother teared up, but she held the phone steady, taking clear pictures from every angle. Hargrove wrote notes rapidly. We're filing an emergency restraining order today. After that, we'll move on the fraud charges. I swallowed hard. A mix of fear and strength surged through me. Okay, I whispered. Let's do it. After we left the lawyer's office, I felt different. Not healed. Not safe. Not whole. But empowered. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to damage. I was taking action. For the first time since my father died, I felt like I was standing on ground he would be proud of. My grandmother gripped my hand as we walked to the car. I'm right here with you, she said. Every step. I nodded, feeling my determination sharpen. Leon had taken my money. My mother had taken my trust. Together, they had taken my peace. But starting today, I was taking everything back. And soon, they would learn that the girl they tried to break had grown into a woman they should have feared. Filing the restraining order was the easy part. Living with the fallout, that was where the real storm began. By the next morning, Leon had been served with the emergency protective order. It barred him from contacting me, approaching me, or coming within 200 feet of my home or workplace. Attorney Hargrove filed it quickly, efficiently, and without giving Leon a chance to twist the situation in his favor. But the order didn't stop Leon from reacting exactly the way we expected. At 8:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. Not from Leon, he was legally barred. But from my mother. "Mom, Aaliyah, what have you done? The police came to our house. Leon is furious. You're exaggerating everything." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then placed the phone face down. Some wounds don't need immediate answers. 2 minutes later, another message arrived. "Mom, take this back. Undo this. You're destroying our family." That word again. Family. When had she forgotten that I was part of that word? At noon, she showed up at my grandmother's house. Not to apologize. Not to check if I was okay. But to defend Leon. She didn't even knock. She burst through the door with red, furious eyes. "Aaliyah, how could you do this? You embarrassed us in front of the neighbors. You got Leon in trouble for nothing." My grandmother stepped between us like a shield. "For nothing?" she snapped. "He attacked her. He stole from her. He bled her dry emotionally and financially. And you," she pointed at my mother, "you let him." My mother's face twisted. "You're always against me. You always have been." "No," my grandmother said firmly. "I have always been against your bad decisions." I slowly stood up from the sofa, my shoulder still throbbing beneath the bandage. "Mom," I said, "I didn't destroy this family. You did. When you chose Leon over me." Her eyes filled with tears, but not the kind a mother cries for her child. They were self-pity tears. Tears of someone whose control was slipping. "He's my husband," she whispered. "I can't betray him." I stepped closer. "And I'm your daughter. But you betrayed me first." She flinched. Because deep down, she knew it was the truth. My grandmother opened the front door. "You need to leave," she said. "Right now. She's healing, and you're not welcome until you come as a mother, not Leon's soldier." My mother hesitated, looking at me as if waiting for me to stop her. But I didn't. She walked out without another word. And as the door closed behind her, something inside me finally snapped free. I wasn't her burden anymore. I wasn't her emotional punching bag. I wasn't her bank account. I wasn't her excuse. I wasn't her shield against loneliness. I was done being anything but myself. The next stage happened fast, faster than I expected. Attorney Hargrove filed a criminal complaint for assault with a deadly object, the ceramic tray. A financial fraud case. A civil suit for recovery of stolen funds. A legal request to subpoena all joint accounts my mother and Leon had touched. A forgery investigation regarding unauthorized withdrawals. Leon tried to fight back. He hired a cheap attorney and painted me as an emotional daughter seeking revenge. But evidence doesn't bend to lies. And I had everything. Pictures of my injuries, bank statements, forged documents, records of unauthorized transfers, witness testimony from my grandmother, my father's letter, the insurance policy naming me, not my mother, records showing the account was emptied right after his death, proof that Leon had signed my name without authorization. It was more than enough. The day of the hearing. The courtroom was cold, with high ceilings and rows of polished wooden benches. I sat beside Attorney Hargrove, my grandmother on my other side. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear nothing else. Leon entered with swagger, chin up, smug smile, fake confidence dripping off him like cologne. My mother followed behind him like a shadow wearing guilt. When the judge called our case, everything became real. Attorney Hargrove presented the evidence clearly, calmly, professionally, but with enough force that the courtroom couldn't ignore a single word. Photos. Bank statements. Forged signatures. Recorded calls. The medical report of my injury. My father's sealed letter. And then, my grandmother testified. She spoke with quiet strength, detailing the missing insurance funds, my mother's admissions, the early signs of manipulation, and Leon's role in shaping every decision. The judge listened intently, occasionally glancing toward my mother, whose face shrank with every detail. When it was Leon's turn to speak, he lied. Boldly, confidently, as if charm could erase evidence. She attacked me first, he said. I grabbed the tray in self-defense. I never touched her accounts. She's twisting everything. Judge Anderson held up a document. A bank statement. My signature, forged perfectly, but not perfectly enough. Mr. Price, he said, this signature is not hers. And you are not authorized on this account. This is fraud. Leon's face lost its color. And as for the assault, the judge continued, the medical report and photographs clearly contradict your statement. Then he turned to my mother. Mrs. Price, do you wish to testify? She stood up shakily, looked at me, looked at Leon, looked back at me, and then, she said the words that broke what was left of my heart. I stand with my husband. Aaliyah is exaggerating. My grandmother gasped. Attorney Hargrove shook his head. The judge's expression hardened. But me? I didn't cry. Not this time. I felt something else, a calmness I had never felt before. Because I finally accepted the truth. My mother wasn't losing me to Leon. She had given me up long before he arrived. The judge made his ruling. Leon was charged with fraud, assault, forgery, theft, financial exploitation. A restraining order was extended. His bail was set high. His accounts were frozen pending investigation. And a civil order was approved to begin recovering my stolen funds. My mother was warned for her complicity and told she could face charges if she continued to obstruct the investigation. When the hearing ended, Leon was taken out in handcuffs. My mother followed him with her eyes. Not with love but with terror. And for the first time since my father died, I walked out of the courtroom feeling like my life was finally, my own. Walking out of that courtroom felt like stepping out of a storm I had been trapped in for years. The air outside tasted different, cleaner somehow, as if the world had been waiting for me to reclaim my place in it. Leon was gone, handcuffed and furious, and for the first time since my father died, I felt like I could breathe. But the truth is, healing isn't immediate. It doesn't wash over you in a single moment. It arrives slowly, hesitantly, like a frightened guest knocking on the door. I expected relief to feel warm, but instead, the first thing I felt was emptiness, a hollow space where my mother's love should have been. She didn't call to check on me. She didn't ask if I was safe. She didn't wonder how I was coping after being attacked. Instead, I received one cold message from her the next morning. You've destroyed your family. I hope this was worth it. I stared at those words for a long time. There was a time when a single sentence from her could break me. But after everything that happened, her message felt like the final confirmation I needed. She had never been on my side. Not when my father died. Not when Leon entered our lives. Not when I bled on her dining room floor. Some people cling to the wrong person so tightly that they don't realize they're letting go of the right one. My mother held on to Leon, and lost me in the process. I packed my things and stayed with my grandmother for a while. She made the house feel like a sanctuary. Every time I looked at her, I saw the only person in my family who had ever fought for me without condition. She cooked meals, brought me warm tea in the evenings, and reminded me, over and over, that I wasn't alone. One night, I broke down, the weight of everything crashing over me. She held my hand gently and said, "Baby, you didn't lose your mother. You lost the illusion of one." And sometimes losing an illusion is the first step to gaining yourself. Those words stayed with me. While my heart healed, the legal system did its work. Leon's lies crumbled one by one under the weight of evidence. Photos of my injuries. Forged signatures. Stolen financial records. Testimony from my grandmother. The letter my father left behind. It all formed a chain so strong not even Leon's arrogance could escape it. Within 3 months, his attorney advised him to accept a plea deal. He pled guilty to fraud and assault. Hearing the judge read out his sentence, 11 months in county jail, followed by probation, felt like watching the door to a long dark chapter finally slam shut. The court ordered him to repay the stolen funds. A civil lawsuit began to recover the rest, including the insurance money my mother helped him take. Investigators from the insurance company reopened my father's file, tracing signatures and bank transfers that should have never existed. Piece by piece, the money they stole began finding its way back to me. But more than the financial justice, what mattered was the emotional freedom. Every day, the pain of what happened loosened its grip. I started waking up without dread. I began sleeping without nightmares. I caught myself smiling at small things: sunlight through the window, my grandmother humming old gospel songs, the scent of coffee in the morning. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in reaction to their cruelty. I was living for myself. And even though a part of me mourned the mother I wished I had, a bigger part accepted the truth. Family is not defined by blood, but by the people who choose you, protect you, and stand beside you when the world falls apart. My grandmother did that. My father had done that. And now, I was learning to do it for myself. Justice wasn't the end of my story, but it was the beginning of the life I was finally ready to build. The months that followed were quiet. But not the kind of quiet that feels empty. It was the kind that feels like recovery. Like a long exhale after years of holding my breath. With Leon behind bars and the legal recovery process underway, the chaos that once surrounded my life finally began to settle. I found myself rediscovering pieces of the woman I used to be, pieces I didn't even realize I had lost. I went back to work full-time. My focus returned sharper than ever, and my clients noticed. My financial consulting career, once clouded by stress and emotional exhaustion, suddenly began to flourish. I felt stronger, more disciplined, more certain. And strangely, more compassionate, especially toward women who walked into my office carrying the same silent heaviness I once carried. One afternoon, while reviewing a case file, my supervisor paused beside me and said, "Aaliyah, whatever you walk through, it made you unstoppable." He was right. The fire that once threatened to burn me down had become the fire that forged me. My grandmother encouraged therapy, and for the first time in my life I went. Sitting in that quiet room, speaking about the wound my mother left behind, helped me release weight I didn't know I still carried. I learned boundaries. I learned to separate guilt from responsibility. I learned that loving yourself sometimes means walking away from those who hurt you, even if they share your blood. Meanwhile, more consequences unfolded. Leon called my mother from jail, begging her to stand by him. But jail strips a person of all their charm, and without his control, his true nature showed through. My mother visited him at first, clinging desperately to the life she had built on lies and denial. But soon, she stopped going. The embarrassment, the whispers from neighbors, the legal warnings from the court, they all began to pile onto her. Eventually, she broke. She appeared at my grandmother's door one evening, eyes sunken, hands shaking, shoulders slumped under the weight of regret she could no longer hide. "Aaliyah," she said, unable to meet my eyes, "I'm sorry." The apology didn't fix anything. It didn't erase the bruises. It didn't return the stolen money. It didn't undo the years of choosing Leon over me. But it was the first time she had acknowledged the truth. And acknowledgement, no matter how late, has its own kind of power. I didn't hug her. I didn't hate her. I simply said, "Mom, I hope you find yourself again." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was closure. After that, she chose a quieter life, away from Leon, away from his control. I didn't step back into her world, and she didn't try to step into mine. Some distances are healthier unclosed. As for me, life moved upward. The civil court ruled in my favor. A significant portion of my father's stolen insurance money was returned. The rest was scheduled in restitution payments Leon would be legally required to make during his probation. I moved into a new apartment, bright, modern, filled with sunlight, nothing like the dim spaces where I once cried silently. My grandmother helped me decorate it with soft blues and golds, telling me every room should feel like hope. And for the first time since my father's passing, it did. Slowly, I built a new rhythm. Morning jogs in the park. Long work meetings where I felt respected. Sunday dinners with my grandmother. Nights spent reading instead of worrying. A heart that didn't flinch every time the phone buzzed. One day, while walking to my car after work, I caught my reflection in a shop window. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked different, but because I looked like someone who had survived something big. Someone who had rebuilt herself from the ground up. Someone my father would be proud of. And that realization anchored something deep inside me. I wasn't the girl bleeding on the dining room floor anymore. I wasn't the daughter begging for love from someone who couldn't give it. I wasn't the victim of Leon's violence or manipulation. I was the woman who stood up. The woman who fought back. The woman who won. The truth my grandmother revealed, the truth my mother tried to bury, didn't break me. It set me free. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after the court cases ended. Healing wasn't a straight line. Some mornings I woke up strong. Other mornings I woke up remembering the way my mother looked at me the night I bled on her floor, and the ache returned like a bruise beneath the skin. But healing isn't about forgetting the past. It's about refusing to let it control the future. And my future finally belonged to me. The day Leon was released from jail, I felt nothing. No fear. No anger. No anxiety. Because it didn't matter anymore. He couldn't hurt me, not legally, not emotionally, not physically. His power over me was gone. My mother tried reaching out twice more over the following year. Not to rebuild a relationship, but to ease her own guilt. I responded politely but with distance. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you choose when to open. And I wasn't ready to open anything for her. My grandmother remained my constant. She was the anchor that held me steady, the only parent I had left in the true sense of the word. She celebrated every victory with me, big or small. When I paid off my student debt, she baked a peach cobbler. When I got a promotion at work, she insisted on taking me to dinner at her favorite soul food restaurant. When I moved into a new apartment with sky blue curtains and warm golden lights, she brought a small framed quote from my father. "Lily, don't let the world dim your light." I placed it on my bedside table. And every night, I whispered back, "I won't, Daddy. I won't." The biggest transformation came not from the courtroom and not from the restitution payments, but from the quiet moments where I chose myself. I started taking weekend trips around North Carolina, small towns, lakes, scenic drives filled with soft music and open roads. I started journaling my thoughts, not for closure, but for clarity. I started reconnecting with old friends I'd pushed away during the darkest years. I even started dating again, slowly, carefully, without forcing anything. But the most important thing I did was forgive myself. Forgive myself for staying too long. For wanting my mother's love so badly. For believing Leon's lies. for not seeing the warning signs sooner. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing what happened. It was about releasing myself from the blame I carried for things that were never my fault. My therapist told me something that changed the way I saw everything. You didn't fail your mother. She failed the version of herself you needed her to be. That sentence freed me in a way nothing else had. One evening, about a year after everything happened, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, looking at the city lights glowing softly against the dark sky. The air was warm, the world was quiet, and the peace I felt didn't feel borrowed for the first time. It felt earned. I realized something important. Everything Leon took from me, I regained. Everything my mother destroyed, I rebuilt. Everything I lost, I recreated in a stronger form. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't even a survivor. I was a woman shaped by fire, polished, not burned. My father's love still lived in me. My grandmother's strength guided me. And my own resilience carried me to a life I never thought I could build again. I closed my eyes and whispered into the warm night air. I didn't just survive you. I outgrew you. And for the first time since childhood, I felt whole.